So let's head into the last session for the day today, which is on shifting board oversight from operations to risk and strategy. As CS professionals, we have all experienced the boardroom dynamics and the roles and responsibilities of a board of directors. Let's hear from our esteemed panel today on how the board oversight has shifted from operations to risk and strategy. I would like to take this opportunity, and it's my immense pleasure to call our industry experts for this last session. And on our panel members today, we have Mr. M. Nurul Alam, Senior Vice President, Institute of Chartered Secretaries of Bangladesh. Mr. Alam. A huge round of applause, friends. I would like to invite Mr. Tang Chen Ming, former President, Malaysian Association of Company Secretaries. Mr. Stanley Park, founder and director, Stanley Park Associates Private Limited, and a director of Singapore Corporate Council Association. CS Dr. Sudhindra Putti, Associate Vice President and Company Secretary, Saint Limited. Thank you, sir. And CS Sachin Mishra, Head Legal and Company Secretary, Tata Consulting Engineers Limited. Thank you all.
Very good afternoon to all of you participating in person as well as virtually. I'll quickly get to make some opening remarks and then request my fellow panelists to make their opening remarks as well for about 6 to 8 minutes. And then we will have a free-flowing panel discussion amongst ourselves. And then time permitting, we will also open it up to the floor for any questions that we might have. So the topic for our discussion this afternoon is board oversight, the changing paradigm from operations to risk and strategy. Before we get straight into the topic, I think it might be apposite to understand the concept and the institution of the board of directors itself. As students and practitioners of company law, all of us are pretty well aware as to what position, importance, accountability and liability rests on this institution called the Board of Directors. The Bard famously said in Henry IV, "Uneasy lies the head that wears the crown." But then let me ask you, which is the head that does not want to wear that crown? Very few people, if at all, realize or understand that this crown is ephemeral, and while it does seem to be beautiful for starters, it is bedecked with thorns. So for those of you who understand the nitty-gritty and the nuances of being on corporate boards, it's imperative to gauge the significance, the accountability, the liability that is expected of them. Going back in history to the 19th century, we had the celebrated cases in the United Kingdom, whether it was Wilson versus Ferguson or the Lands Allotment Company cases, where it's been very clearly held that directors, the board of directors, are at the same time agents. They occupy a fiduciary position, and to a large extent, they are trustees, managing the wealth of the shareholders. Much water indeed has flown down the Thames, the Potomac, the Ganga, and indeed the Kalang here. And over the last 2 centuries, if anything, this concept of holding the board responsible and accountable has only got strengthened. Back in India, the Companies Amendment Act of 2000 for the first time introduced this concept of a director's responsibility statement. And much later, in 2013, when the New Companies Act replaced the 1956 Act, we had chapter and verse talking about the functions, the responsibilities of directors, and the SEBI regulations for listed companies also came up in parallel, listing out the role, responsibilities, functions, and liabilities of directors. What has flown from all this is the position of the board, which was primarily seen to be that of managing the affairs of the company from a strategic level, has got that much more stinging, has got that much more onerous, with, despite all the talk of ease of doing business, there's a humongous amount of responsibility. There's the Damocles sword that constantly hangs on the heads of the directors. And mind you, I'm not speaking merely from the viewpoint of the Companies Act, but a plethora of other laws that are applicable to a company, and the board needs to be mindful of it. Be that as it may, we are assembled here to discuss and try to understand how building effective boards can lead to sustainable governance. My predecessor speaker here, Mr. Pandey, spoke at length about ESG, and one pivotal aspect of ESG is diversity. A key aspect of sustainable governance and the way boards can drive it is also hinged upon diversity. More often than not, when we talk about diversity, the allusion is invariably to gender, nationality, ethnicity, and so on. But a key aspect that invariably tends to get ignored, while these are the more objective aspects of diversity, I think a very critical subjective aspect of diversity is around thought diversity. That element of bringing in a new thought to the boardroom, that ability to challenge a decision, that ability to push back something which has already been brought to the board, I think that whiff of fresh air is what is essential for corporate boardrooms if they have to navigate into the future. I'll give you a simple example. In management, we have this principle of, or the rule of subtraction. We all tend to get warped significantly in history. And then we believe that if a particular activity, if a particular transaction has been done in a particular manner, then for time immemorial, it goes on in the same way. We generally fail to understand or even analyze if there is a different means of doing it. If there are various components to that activity, can something be removed from it so that even by subtracting it, the process does not get disturbed? In fact, the efficiencies tend to be a lot better. So what I'm trying to drive home is the thought diversity, that ability to bring in a new thought to every aspect of doing business is, I think, imperative. The second thing which will drive boards to and companies to sustainable governance is expertise. Particularly in the context of independent directors, it is not merely a tick box approach that a person satisfies the conditions listed out into the Companies Act or under the listing regulation. What is more important in spirit is for the directors to bring to the table that expertise to contribute to the growth of the company. Thankfully, again in India, over the last few years, the listed companies have now been mandated to also have a mapping of the skill sets. What are the skills that are required for a company, and what are the skill sets that each individual director brings to the board? And a mapping of this needs to be disclosed as part of the appointment resolution as well as on a going concern in the annual report to the shareholders. This is a salutary step that has been brought in by the Indian regulator, which will ensure that appointment of directors, more so independent directors, is not a perfunctory exercise any longer, but really adds value. There are a couple of other things which are essential, and for paucity of time, I will merely dwell over them. It's about independence in the truest sense. It's about directors being accountable, one, of course, to the shareholders, to a limited extent to the regulators, to the board, to the chair, and to a large extent to the wider stakeholders that are involved. Again, Mr. Pandey spoke about the concept of stakeholders. It's become so nebulous today that any person, any Tom, Dick, and Harry on the road can also be willy-nilly, vicariously a stakeholder of your company. So that's the extent to which matters are progressing as we speak. Long-term focus and adaptability. Again, the focus is so much on ESG and sustainability. Sustainability is something for forever. If we are all students of law, and when we study custom as a source of law, all of us would recall that in the English context, it needs to go back to 1184. If a custom can be traced back to 1184, the reign of a particular king in the United Kingdom, it's a valid custom. But the same British judges, when they came to India, they said that a valid custom is something which is being practiced from time immemorial. That is, it should not have been traced to a particular individual. You go back any number of generations, that custom has been practiced. So that, in the real sense, is what sustainability is all about. Fast forward to today. Whatever we are doing, whatever boards are doing today, is something which will have to be available for generations to come, and that is what sustainability or the long-term focus is all about. Boards need to be cognizant of not missing out on not focusing too much on the short term and jeopardizing the company's interests in the long term. I think that is something, the long-term focus is something which they will have to keep in mind all the time. Risk management. This again forms a significant part of corporate boardrooms functioning today. This also gets dovetailed into the ESG practice itself. The Boardroom Bellwether Survey, which is conducted annually in the United Kingdom, jointly by the Financial Times and the Chartered Governance Institute, came out with certain very interesting results over the last year. For 2023, and indeed for the last 3 years prior to that, they said that cyber risk, climate change, and global economic risks topped the charts, at least for the last 3-4 years. Of course, thanks to COVID, the pandemic also got inserted as a key risk in the last couple of years, but climate risk, geopolitical risks, and cyber risk are something which all companies will have to start grappling with. The boards need to provide sufficient guidance. They will need to provide strategy on how they navigate, on how the companies navigate through these troubled waters. And finally, there is, of course, the question of ethical leadership. Unless the board of directors, with all the attributes, with all the expertise, if there is a lack of ethics in them, if there is that lack of morality in them, any amount of talking will take the company nowhere. Let me spend a couple of minutes before I close on gauging geopolitical risks, the strategies and responsibilities. As I said, the Boardroom Bellwether Survey in the United Kingdom just revealed that geopolitical risks is something which is having a significant impact. And we live in a world today where none of us is dependent or independent, we are all interdependent. We know that when there is a war between Ukraine and Russia, it has significant impact across the globe. If China sneezes, the whole world catches a cold. And I mean it literally as well as figuratively. That being the case, it's absolutely essential for boards to be cognizant of the geopolitical risks that are unfolding and how they come up with strategies, how they come up with mechanisms to deal with them, to tackle them and overcome them. One thing which COVID taught us is that with every threat, there is also an opportunity. Every challenge, there is an opportunity lurking there for us. And how agile are we to go and make the best of it? How agile are we to leverage upon those challenges? The board has therefore a very pivotal role to play in providing direction. It needs to be like a compass. Like the seafarers would always depend on the lighthouse or the compass, so too I think the board of directors will need to act as an active compass, and they will of course have access to the services of company secretary who will guide them on what their duties and responsibilities are and how they need to perform within these contours. So it's imperative, it's essential for the board of directors to be understanding that the strategy that they provide to the companies is going to take them in the long run and make it a sustainable entity. We spoke about stakeholder engagement. Let me spend a few seconds on talking about the stakeholder engagements and the relationships that we have today. While, as I said, it's fairly nebulous, we can still quantify it as perhaps the employees, the investors, the customers, the supply chain, the regulators, and the society at large. But believe me, there's a new elephant in the room that goes by the name proxy advisory firms. Believe me, in the next few years, if it already hasn't shattered the way corporate works today, proxy advisory firms are here to stay, and they're going to be dictating terms. The kind of thresholds, the kind of benchmarks that they bring forth are significantly higher from what the law mandates, and companies will need to do a lot of pulling up before they can match up to these standards and start excelling. I don't need to even tell you, you just do a random Google, you will find any number of resolutions getting defeated or withdrawn because of negative recommendations from proxy advisory firms. So believe me, a key stakeholder that boards will have to deal with in the days and months and years to come is dealing with proxy advisory firms. And then as company secretaries, we always have this compliance conundrum. The same bellwether survey in the United Kingdom that I alluded to said that over 81% of the respondents, this is across the FTSE 350 companies, 81% of the FTSE 350 companies responded that boards are finding it increasingly difficult to devote time on strategic matters, straddled as they are with compliance and regulatory matters. So on the one hand, probably it's skewed to a certain extent, and it might have slightly different results in different geographies, but then this is nevertheless a barometer that we all need to be aware of. So compliance and regulatory framework is certainly taking up a significant amount of time of the board. And since we happen to speak about ESG, a significantly high number, over 3/4 of the respondents in the same FTSE survey also said that they will find it difficult to negotiate and comply with all the requirements on ESG disclosures in the years to come. It was corporate governance a few years ago. It is ESG and sustainability now, which is the buzzword, and everybody is falling onto that bandwagon. It's important, it is required, it is the need of the hour. But the business of business is business, and we should never lose sight of that. If companies and boards are going to be stuck in this compliance conundrum or trying to ensure disclosures under ESG, the main business is going to take a backseat. How we strike a balance, how companies strike a balance is where the boards needs to step in and guide the managements accordingly. And finally, I would also want to touch upon the importance of or the value of values for boards for sustainable governance. Remember that valuations will have no value if they are not backed by values. Valuations don't usher in values. It is values that give you a good valuation. Again, market in the recent history is replete with examples of how skewed valuations can get if they are not backed up by values. I think it's absolutely important that corporate boards are aware of these responsibilities, and when they work within these broad contours, they'll be well on the way to ensuring and guiding their companies for sustainable governance. Thank you. Go through this process of requesting each of the panelists to make their opening remarks, and I request Sachin to start. Thanks.
Thank you, Sudhir, and you have very well articulated the background of the session which we have been taking here. First, thank you ICSI and Singapore team for the wonderful hospitality and the arrangement what you guys have done, and thank you for inviting me for the same. And the topic as it goes, the shifting of board oversight from operation to risk and the strategy. All of us are company secretaries are here. Tell me how many of us have actually dealt in last 15 years the preparation of the agenda paper of the board? Couple of it? Yeah. Maybe 10%. Good. What shift have you seen? The shift of the preparation of agenda paper, why it is important. 15 years back, as Sudhindra had rightly pointed out in one of the survey, that the board time goes in the statutory and compliance, they don't get time to devote to the strategy. And he also pointed one more point, that business of a business is to do business. Now, taking that particular aspect ahead, the board is ultimately responsible for organizations' performance and accountable for their failure also. It's a very bold statement. Somebody can say, why board is responsible? It's ultimately the responsibility of a managing director or the management. But in the recent example, if you have seen in India also, which is happening, lot of startups have come up. And those startups, they got the money, and overnight, because of the governance issue, the board got changed. In fact, one of the biggest financial institutions, I don't want to name them, they were caught in the related party transactions, and the MCA has to chip in, and they removed each and every board member. They put the new board member on there. What this indicate? This indicate that becoming a board member is not just a prestigious issue. It is also responsibility and accountability. I remember one of the dialogue, it's a famous dialogue which says that the big responsibility comes with the big accountability. And that's what something goes with the board member also. Now, if I say that what are the key sets of board oversight which require? As I said, 15 years back, when you see the agenda paper, preparation of the account, adoption of the account, and some of the operations matter. Now, what are all coming in the board agenda paper? You are confirming the compliance of the law. You are confirming the related party transactions. You are confirming that all the compliance are very well in place. Internal auditor report, statutory auditor report. ESG is a new elephant in the room. There is another elephant is going to come, which is the data protection or the digital act related things, which was not being talked. So if you see, the list is getting increased. The board meeting, which used to get over in 1.5 hours, today it starts at 10 a.m. in the morning and it goes till 5 or 6 in the evening. Yeah, even for the 2 days. I agree with what Ranjit is saying. So what does it shows? It shows that no, there are accountability in terms of compliances. There are accountability in terms of your procedures and other things. At the same time, you have to see what is happening in the business. You have to see whether the business is going in the right direction or it is not going in the right direction. And you have to intervene. Simply giving a power of attorney or a schedule of authority to the management is not going to solve the problem. There is a review process is also required. Ranjit has mentioned the KPI in the ESG. A KPI of even one principle of ESG, how depth it can go, as a company secretary, we don't have any idea. And I'm telling you with a pinch of salt. We could be very good on S and G part of ESG, but when it goes to the E part of the ESG, do we know what is that? It is all English what we can talk. But when we go to the E part and when we finalize the KPI of it, how many of the board member will even understand? You have lawyers on your board, you have chartered accountant on your board, then you have to get some scientist on the board. Yeah, you have to get some scientists on the board. You have to get some technicians on the board. Otherwise, management will show you something. You will have very good breakfast, lunch, peanuts, samosa, everything, and you will certify everything. And at the end of the 2 year, you will understand, my God, it was all bluff. It will take time to understand it was all bluff. Because ultimately, we are all human. We are expert in our domain. But what business a company is doing, only the company knows. There is a curtain between the board and the management. And to remove that curtain, it's a skill and it's an art, which a very seasoned board member can get into it. Now, if I simply restrict myself into some of the key duties of the board member, which are mentioned in the Indian Companies Act 2013, which under section 166, it gives you 5 broad area of a board oversight, which the board should take into cognizance of it. Number one, act as per the article of association of a company. Now, article of association include many things. It includes shareholders' right, board right, operations right, blah blah blah. It runs into the parenthesis. How many of the board member actually see the article of association of the company? As a company secretary, can you put your hand on a heart and say, I tell you, none of the board member even ask for the copy for it. But that's their first duty, to act as per article of association of the company. Number two, acting in the interest of company, stakeholder and the employees. Yes, we have got some good framework. You got ARCM, you got NRC, you got operation committee, to the extent that work is happening. Exercising skill, care and independent judgments. It's very important. But when you get a picture from a management and you act on that blindly, can you say that you are having an independent judgment? Answer, I leave it to you. Avoid direct or indirect conflict of interest. It's very important because in today's date, you must have seen one of the airline was continuously making loss, and the subsidiary of airline, which is into the hospitality service, completely owned by the owner, is making continuously profit. How we are making that parity of a person sitting on the board is not having direct or indirect conflict. Last, fine for any contravention ranging from 1 lakh to 5 lakh. It's a 166, but that's not just all for a director's duty. There are some other fines also, which we will touch base on my Q&A answer. With that, I hand over the mic to Surendra. You can call somebody else also.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Respected audience and the senior CS members, Ranjit Pandey, sitting in front of me, and Mr. Sudhindra, today's moderator, and my co-panelist, Mr. Tang Chan Ming, Mr. Stanley Park, and CS Shachin. It's a pleasure for me to be here to actually discuss on today's very important topic, shifting of the board oversight from the operations to risk and strategies. So from our experience, we know that the board is the actually think tank, or this is the actually policy making body for organizations. So when actually board direct wrongly, then the company will go to the wrong directions. And the main thing of our today's actual discussion is that the business world is changing, especially the technological part. The technology's technological evaluation is changing many things for the business and for the even environment also. So if any business fail to take the changes, then obviously that business will not be successful. So our discussion is how the company actually make its sustainability and ensure its sustainability. So the actually directors actually confirm the board, form the board with the various expertise from the society. So if the formation of a board is not properly made, in that case, actually the business will be face lots of challenge, and the sustainability is will be at stake. So our today's discussion will focus on this, and now on the actually shifting, I will actually point out why the shift is necessary. Let us actually focus on long-term value. Boards that delve into strategy can guide the company towards sustainable success, not just short-term wins. Please. And then the actually how we make the shift. Clear governance, establish a strong governance framework that defines board responsibilities and separate them from operational oversight. Board composition, ensure the board has members with diverse expertise relevant to future strategy and risk management. Consider terms limit to bring the fresh perspective. Effective communications, management should present information to the board in a way that facilitates strategic discussion and risk assessment, not just reporting on past performance. Two of my previous speaker emphasized on the board strategy, and board directors' capabilities is most important for the business success. And the benefits. So the improved decision making, boards equipped with the strategic and risk focused lens can make more informed choice for the company's long-term well-being. Enhanced resilience, proactive risk management helps the company anticipate and weather potential storms. Competitive advantage. A strategic board can guide the company towards innovative approaches and capitalize on emerging opportunities. This shift requires a change in mindset and practices, but the benefits of a board that is actively shaping the company's future are significant. So this is my actually preliminary discussion, and we will discuss on our next question and answer session. Thank you very much.
ICSI, Mr. President of the ICSI, Mr. Past President of the ICSI, and ladies and gentlemen, and Dr. Putty, and my esteemed fellow co-panelists. I'm really honored and quite flattered to even have this opportunity to speak here. And one of the reasons why is because I can't think of any other country in the world that generates more excitement today than India. And I say that genuinely. And I think that resonates with all of you here. Because no other economy is bigger, no other economy is more dynamic, no other economy has more potential. Not just in the eyes of Indian corporate secretaries, but in fact in the eyes of the world. And I hope I'm a reflection of that international interest. Now I have four simple, conceptually simple points to make. And each of them is I will present in decreasing order of, shall we say, consensus. So my first point, I think everyone will agree with, and there will be hardly any debate about it, and that is that in order for boards to shift the focus of their remit or their oversight from operations to risk management and strategy, the competencies and the skill sets of the board members and the board more generally are going to have to change. not only are they going to have to change, but in my opinion, they're going to have to improve. I think these are similar themes that some of my co-panelists have already highlighted very well, that the skill set, the training, the background, expertise of everyone who is on the board has to be up to snuff. And it has to improve if you want to improve the scope of their responsibilities and their remit. The second point, which is, I think, also quite in consensus, but perhaps a little bit less than the first point, is that the skill set that the board directors have to embrace and have to master in today's day and age is different. And I think in many ways, again, articulated very eloquently by my co-panelists, in many ways they're more complex. And I don't need to explain to you everything that's going on in today's world that will make the job of a board director more complicated. ESG, of course, cybersecurity, digital transformation, geopolitical tensions, supply chain difficulties, globalization, high interest rates, etc. The skill set that a board director in India needs now today to run the board well and to increase his or her remit is, in my judgment, vastly more complex, difficult, and challenging. I think that was one of the points, the most recent, in fact, that all of my co-panelists have mentioned. So it's a different skill set that people have to learn, that board members have to learn. My third point, which is in decreasing order of consensus, risk management is inherently a subjective issue. Now, I don't care about big data. I don't care what people say about metrics and how data is the new oil and data is the key to running a company well, etc. In all of my years, in all of my 30 years of dealing with boards, being involved in boards, being on boards, advising boards, I have not once seen any statement, analysis, or assessment of risk that was not overwhelmingly subjective. Now, it was put together and presented in all sorts of ways that try to make the issue not subjective, or at least not to appear as subjective. Numbers, facts, figures, data. But at heart, I think most of you may agree with me, although this is subject to debate, the issue of risk assessment, analysis, and management was a subjective affair. And I think that continues to be the case today. And I think that every board member, in India or otherwise, needs to be keenly aware of that. Because that will color how you view your co-board members' statements and views of risk, and it will also color how you view your own statements and management of risk. My last point, which is probably the least subject to consensus, but I think which is supported by many, is that the key to good board governance, in my judgment, is diversity. Dr. Putty stated in his opening remarks that thought diversity was important. Some of the other panelists have mentioned expertise and getting scientists and this, that, and the other thing on the board. Diversity. So diversity is a relatively common theme But I think the most important element of diversity the Indian boards need to embrace today, not just Indian boards, but boards indeed across the globe, is gender diversity. In 2013, 6% of Indian board directors were women. 2022, 18% were women. It's progress. But in the 2011 census, 48.5 of India's 1.2 billion people were women. I think Indian boards and other boards as well have a long way to go to achieve the diversity that I think will make corporations run better. Now, don't get me wrong. I believe in DEI. But I don't advocate increasing gender diversity for purposes of DEI. My view, my judgment, is that increasing gender diversity will increase thought diversity. It will increase expertise. It will present different perspectives on all of the problems that companies face in a way that will enhance, strengthen, and improve the decisions that boards make. And I won't stop, of course, at gender diversity. I'm not a feminist. I'm not up here to engage in a feminist crusade. Of course, diversity in other respects are important as well. But given the sheer fact that half of the country's population, half of the world's population, is made up of women, I think it makes a lot of sense from a purely commercial and practical standpoint to increase significantly gender representation on Indian boards. And that in turn, I think, will help improve the measurement and also the assessment of whether those boards have succeeded and many other things as well. So I'll leave you with those 4 points, and I would hope that you would consider seriously how diversity in thought diversity, and other types of diversity as well can improve the Indian boards. Thank you.
And very good afternoon, and very honored, invited by ICSI to attend this conference, and also congratulate ICSI successfully organized this third international conference in Singapore. I'm from Malaysia. The topic that we're going to discuss now is shifting board oversight from operation to risk and strategy. Actually, the board of directors are made of human beings, like you and me, correct? So important to me, formally, the board of directors are operation, managing the company. So actually now, there are changes. They are fast changing, evolving. So there are risks involved, and there are long-term strategy that the board must planning forward to make the company sustainable. So actually, you can see we are human beings, but you can see that many boards, they are unwilling to accept changes, unwilling to make long-term changes. They still stick to their own mentality of managing the company as 1, 2, 3. So actually, why that nowadays we need to change our attitude towards that? Who has to change? The board of directors. So the board of directors, their mentality had to change through training, through what we call brainstorming, change their mind. So when the person have gone through this kind of learning through these conferences, for example, or seminar, then they will learn why there's a changes, why there must be a change. So actually nowadays can see the fast evolving world. You can see there are geopolitical risks that are going to be faced by us company. For example, now got war in Ukraine with Russia, and also we can see the war in Gaza resulted in Red Sea. The shipment cannot go through. So increase in the high cost of transportation. So important thing we want to change. The board of directors must change, and how to change. So the essence of constructing effective boards lies in their diversity. So we need more people who have different kind of background and mentality that come together to discuss and how to have moving forward for the company. So we need diversity, expertise, and commitment to transparency and accountability. Commitment is very important to me because if the board of directors is for the best interest of company as what is required by the Companies Act, then they definitely will work for the best interest company. For example, in Malaysia, there are two examples that I quote to you. First is Proton. Proton has been making losses for many, many years. And finally, he sold to China company and changed the board of directors. And they come into a new policy and turn around. And now Proton is making money. And second one, I think you know well, is MAS, Malaysian Airlines, have been making loss all the way for many, many years. And this year, when there's a change of board directors, and they turn around and making profit. So to me, important thing, the person who made the company to move forward to make money is the board of directors. It's the person who leading the companies. So the person must have the right mentality and commitment to make sure that the company is moving forward. And for the best interest company. What is the best interest company? Anyone can tell me? Always you say for the best interest company. What is the meaning of the best interest company? To me, I simply define the best interest company meant do not have personal interest. If you have personal interest inside the element, then it's not for the best interest company. If you have the best interest company, it's for the company. It's not for yourselves. So if that board, the leaders of the company do not have the personal interest in that company, then company sure will make profit. Just now I shared with one of the members from India. He said, your Prime Minister, he for the best interest of the people, the common people. So India now economy is moving forward, right? What I have learned. So now India moving out to the second biggest economy in the world. So actually, it's the person. It's not whatever methodology or procedure that you're using. If any methodology or method using is no use if the person do not follow. So important is your mind and your heart for the company. So important for a company to move like a tree. A tree's important is the roots, right? If the root is rotten, the tree will die. If the board is rotten, the company will die. So important is the person, is the root. If the root is strong, the root is healthy, then this tree will flourish. So that's why we come to corporate governance. So now we are talking about corporate governance. So what is a corporate governance? Corporate governance is integrity, accountability, transparency. So this is a very simple element that each of us or each of the board must instill in our mind. We are for the company. We are for the best interest company. So it's related. Best interest company means corporate governance. If you have corporate governance, means simple to say, as I say, in this IFRS reporting, ESG, accountability, transparency, and also just now, Najib Pandi talked about KPI for leaders. So the board leader have a KPI. Who set the KPI for the leaders? You are the leaders. You are the ones setting the KPI for yourselves. Then who to determine that KPI? Is it the stakeholders? Is it the shareholders? Or authority to determine your KPI? So this is my question to put forward. Leadership quality KPI is set by yourselves. So this is question how to determine the KPI for the board or directors. So now you can see now there are a lot of geopolitical risks that involve. Not only geopolitical risks, but also racial risks, religious risks. For example, just go in Malaysia. Recently, whether you heard of the case on this KK Mart. KK Mart, just because KK Mart have 5 swords with the word Allah and resulted in the Muslim to boycott this KK Mart. So as a board of directors, are you aware, are you sensitive to this kind of issue? Why you put the word Allah on the short and cause this? So actually risk means you yourself had to be sensitive to the environment. So always the board had to go into discussion whether whatever thing planning or you have will cost the company in difficult position or not. So this is risk management. Actually, it's not only procedural, not only methodological, but also important. You yourself whether sensitive or not to sometimes intuition in yourselves. Whatever thing you do, whether will cause bad consequences to the company or not. So that's why we have to understanding all these risks and also geopolitical risks. Nowadays, geopolitical risks, it may not be risk, it may be opportunity, right? Opportunity for us to take, for example, now there's trade war between America and China. So now China been sanctioned certain product, not go to US. So if country like India, country like Malaysia, like Singapore, we are in the middle, then we have this opportunity to take this risk turn into opportunity. So as a board, we must have a long-term planning. Strategy means it's long-term, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. So planning strategy is long-term planning to take this into consideration, how to make our company to take this opportunity in this instability in geopolitical and risk environment. And also the board role of corporate priorities and also the board responsibility extend across setting strategic directions. So we must have the direction, move forward. What are we going to do? Now you can see the next generation coming, the car is ESG, right? Battery. So the petrol in future will be out. So now what is our opportunity for our company go to direction? Solar, for example, solar is ESG, right? Friendly, so environment friendly. So energy, hydropower, Solar, especially solar now, is very popular in many countries. For example, in Malaysia, many houses, they're using solar energy to produce electricity. So these are the opportunity that given to us. So I just to share a few of this. So my foundation of my sharing is that board is a human being. So board, sometimes you can't use methodology or procedure to let them to follow. They can go, they can go other ways to overcome the procedure. Important is the mentality, brainstorming, so that make them to aware and committed and have the best interest company and follow the corporate governance. Thank you for the sharing.
So, Mr. Allen, given that there are so many changes in technology, the rapid advancement, what business opportunities come along? They also come with their potential risks. So, how are these opportunities to be leveraged and the risks managed? How is the board going to play a role in this?
Thank you, Mr. Shodhindra Bhutte. Actually, yes, the technological advancement is bringing lots of opportunity for the business. At the same time, the opportunities are actually coming with potential risk. The opportunities, especially if we see that the technology is actually opening the doors for the minimizing cost in terms of the labor cost and in terms of the carrying cost and sourcing cost, etc. So if we actually take these opportunities, we have to identify the associated risk. So if we properly identify the potential risk and properly manage this risk, then our opportunities will be actually benefit the companies. So how we can make sure these opportunities is actually bringing benefit to the company? So it is actually dependent on the how the board is directing the company management to work on. So the board management actually work following the policy actually undertaken by the board. So the board needs to be have the diversified knowledge, not the actually previous fundamental thinking. So the board must be included the expertise from the knowledgeable cyber security specialist and the people who understand actually how the accounting technologies, especially the financial reporting standard is changing to comply fully, so that the company is not actually jeopardized for the penalty imposed by the regulators. So these are the things, and the diversification in the board and expert people in the board is most important. And again, this the board must be very ethical and work fully perform with the integrity. In that case, the company may sustained.
What do you believe are the significant areas of attention that the boards must be having right now? And do you believe that flowing from there, do you believe that a lack of oversight is also perhaps sometimes leading to the liabilities on the directors?
Yeah, thanks, Sudhir. Um, yes, lack of oversight of the board on the operation or strategy will definitely lead to the liabilities to the board. I'll give you a very good example about it. In world, there are only two companies which manufactures plane, Airbus and Boeing. When Boeing 737 Max started failing and casualties happened across the globe, there was a case on the Boeing company, and on 2020-21 the US court has given a decision on it.
It's a fantastic decision. Somebody should read what the court said to the board, that what they failed. What the board or the court has observed, during the process of investigation, they found that board of directors of Boeing, they don't have any committee which was specifically tasked to see the airline safety or to make any charter on airline safety. Very important point. You are in pharma company, you are in construction company. Do we have such subcommittee? And to what depth they go? Number two, audit committee was focused on financial and production risk and not on airline safety risk. Everywhere in the globe, we say that audit committee is responsible for financial statement. Just see the verdict. They say, have you ever seen the safety risk of the company? Enterprise risk visibility process overseen by audit committee focus on only finance and did not emphasize on any safety related issues. Management did not report to the board on safety issue. The board did not have any means of receiving internal report complaint on safety. These 4 points, if you see, it's very clearly says that as a board member, you cannot stop your oversight at financial and production this thing. And ultimately what happened? There was a settlement. The board has to come to the settlement because the cases was on the board, and $237.5 million of settlement claim were settled. So it's very interesting that, yes, there is a liability on board. Nobody can deny that. And it's the right example here.
Wonderful. Stanley, what do you think are the challenges that boards face as they navigate, as they migrate from operations to risk and strategy? And how do you think we can overcome those challenges?
I think the biggest failing of boards, or perhaps for institutions more generally, is a failure to be open-minded. And that takes different guises. I spoke about one particular aspect of being open-minded in my opening remarks, being open to different backgrounds when seeking representation on the board. But open-mindedness goes much more broadly than that. It's willingness to embrace, to think about, to strategize, to consider an issue or a problem or a potential remedy from multiple different perspectives, especially since risk management, which is one of the areas that we're considering the board to overtake, is so subjective. And that was the other point I had made in my opening remarks as well. It's precisely because risk management and strategy is a subjective endeavor that boards, I think, need to be supremely open-minded. And I think for some conservative boards and board members, that comes difficult because people generally, the older, well, I'm old. The older I get, I won't speak for anyone else, but the older I get, the less I'm willing to move out of my comfort zone. The less I'm willing to move out of my comfort zone, the less open-minded, the more closed-minded I become. So in today's changing, dynamic world of increasingly global and complex problems, I think the biggest issue or skill set that the board needs, I think, is being open-minded in multiple ways.
Thank you. Mr. Ming, if I can ask you, what is the importance of corporate culture and how does it help in achieving the long-term sustainability for a company?
Okay. And corporate culture to me is very important. And right culture. In my association, I always speak to my council members that we should have a right culture. So the right culture will give you the right direction. So important thing, as just now I share, is a brainstorming session. So the brainstorming session will instill into the mind of the board their right culture. For example, certain company, Japanese company, they have their own culture, whereby this culture inculcated in the mind of the not only the board, also their employee, stakeholders. So that culture will give them the right direction and mindset to work for the company and to bring company moving forward. So the culture to me is very important because this culture will change the attitude of the board and also the attitude of the employee and the stakeholders. So how to change it to me is through kind of, for example, interaction. For example, maybe brainstorming, as I just now mentioned, and also through committee and through certain the board meeting, whereby there's a exchange of this kind of ideas to the, but the board itself, it must come up with a set of culture that is for the best interest of the company.
Thank you. My panel and the audience will please allow me the indulgence. We are running short of time. We are hard pressed on time. So we'd probably have to condense this session to just a couple of questions now. We are here, of course, for the next day as well and later this evening. So should anybody from the audience have any questions, you're at liberty to reach out to us. Just to sum this up, and from an Indian perspective, I think the Indian economy, as a lot of speakers have been saying right through the day, we are at the cusp of a significant catharsis, and India is well poised to becoming a global teacher, a global leader. A company, the corporate sector itself is a significant player in this economic scenario. It's the fulcrum of the economic activity of a nation, and a company's performance is as good as its board, it's as efficient as its board is. So the board driving a company to success for sustainable governance is something which is vital as India leapfrogs into the next few years, taking ahead its leadership role. This millennium surely belongs to India, and India will emerge as the Vishwaguru, as we're all eagerly awaiting and seeing. As Pandit Deendayal Upadhyaya very famously said, the real purpose of achievement is when Antyodaya happens, or the benefit of the last man standing in the last line of the social strata. I think there was somebody who just mentioned what is the best interest of the company, not having a personal interest. So Panditji went on further to say that when the last man standing in the last line of the social strata is benefited, indeed the whole nation has been benefited. Thank you so much for your participation, and we'll connect separately. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, dear panelists. It was great insight to understand the shift that has happened in terms of the board management and the accountability and responsibility that a board drives today. Thanks for that insightful session. I would now like to call upon Ms. Raji, CS Raji, who is the committee member from our Singapore Overseas chapter of ICSI, and to felicitate Mr. Tang Chen Ming. Mr. Stanley Park. Thank you, Raji. I would now like to call upon Ms. Vandana, committee member again from Singapore, and to felicitate Mr. Nurul Alam. CS Dr. Sudhendra Putti. And CS Sachin Mishra. Thank you so much, everyone. So with this, we come to the end of our day one of the session. Thank you to all our virtual members, about 3,000 plus members who have joined us today from Global. As we close this session today, we would like to make a few announcements. I do have some car park tickets, just in case if somebody has come down by car and I have used the parking lot here, you can collect the tickets from us. Secondly, the bus for the travel would leave, for the city tour would leave at 5:15. So we would request you all to head downstairs to the lobby, have your tea, coffee, grab your tea, coffee quickly and head back to the bus for the city tour. And tomorrow's session would start at 10 a.m. in the morning. So we would request you all to be here well in time for the morning session. Thank you so much. We have one more announcement. Tomorrow, in light of some changes in the agenda, we would have a session from 11:15 to 11:45. This would be a special session with our chairman and vice chairman ICSI Overseas Center, wherein they will talk about the challenges and opportunities in Singapore. So we look forward to your active participation tomorrow. Thank you all. Thank you.